Don't board the train. Walk away. Go home. Find your bedroom closet and stay there. Don't ask why. You'll understand later. Her fingers were like shards of ice when they pressed my phone back into my palm. Most people would have laughed. I'm a financial analyst. I deal in hard data, risk assessments, and cold, hard percentages. I don't believe in omens. I don't believe in the mystical warnings of strangers wrapped in too many scarves at the 640 commuter platform. Yet, when that woman looked at me, her eyes didn't just see me, they seemed to be reading the fine print of my soul, the parts I hadn't even looked at myself. My name is Alina Morozova. I'm 29, and until that moment, my life was a perfectly balanced ledger. I had a career that demanded precision and a fiancé, Daniel, who felt like the ultimate low-risk, high-reward investment. We were supposed to be finalizing our wedding details that night, centerpieces, seating charts, the mundane architecture of a forever that I thought was guaranteed. The station was humming with the usual chaotic energy of the evening rush. The smell of damp concrete and overpriced coffee hung heavy in the air. I should have been running for the doors of the 640. I should have been thinking about the spreadsheet of guest names, but the weight of that woman's gaze was a physical pressure on my chest. It wasn't theatrical. It was urgent, like a siren you hear from a distance that you know is coming for you. Have you ever had a moment where your intuition screamed so loud it drowned out your common sense? I didn't board. I stood there as the train hissed and pulled away, a blur of silver and light disappearing into the tunnel. I told myself it was just a strange whim, maybe a symptom of wedding stress, but my legs were already moving me toward the exit. I didn't head to Daniel's apartment like we'd planned. I went back to mine. By 7:12 p.m., the silence of my own apartment felt heavy, almost accusatory. I felt like a fool as I stepped into my bedroom, the plush carpet yielding under my heels. I opened the closet door, pushing aside the heavy winter coats and the stack of shoeboxes I'd been meaning to organize for months. I stepped inside and pulled the door shut, leaving just a sliver of light from the bedroom. It was ridiculous. I was a grown woman hiding in the dark because a stranger told me to. I almost pushed the door open to leave. Then I heard the heavy clack of the front door deadbolt. My heart didn't just beat. It slammed against my ribs. I wasn't expecting anyone. Daniel had a key, but he was supposed to be waiting for me at his place across town. He'd told me he was working late on a special surprise for our honeymoon. He had that key for emergencies, the kind of romantic safety net you offer when you think you've found the one. I heard footsteps, confident, heavy. Daniel's gait was unmistakable, but he didn't call out my name. He didn't check the rooms with the caution of someone who thought his fiancée might be home. He walked in like he owned the air I breathed. And then I heard the sound that shattered the last of my rational world. The sharp, rhythmic click of high heels on the hardwood. A woman's laugh followed. It was soft, melodic, and entirely too comfortable in my space. "I told you she'd be on that train," Daniel said. His voice was casual, devoid of the warmth he usually reserved for me. "She's a creature of habit. Tell Alina a train is efficient and she'll be on it every single time." My stomach didn't just drop. It folded in on itself, a cold knot of nausea. For months, I'd felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere between us. He'd become distant, his phone suddenly becoming a forbidden object, his criticisms of me growing sharper. The way I dressed was too corporate. My hours were too long. I wasn't warm enough. He'd blamed it on wedding jitters. He told me stress changes people. And because I calculate risk for a living, I ignored the biggest risk of all, the man standing in my living room. I watched through the crack in the closet door. I could see a slice of the living room, the sofa I'd picked out, the coffee table where we'd shared 100 dinners. I saw him pour wine. Not my wine, a bottle he'd brought. He was hosting a party in the ruins of my trust. "You're sure she suspects nothing?" the woman asked. She moved into view. She was beautiful in a way that felt curated. Sharp features, expensive silk, an air of predatory patience. Daniel laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. "She's predictable, Sarah. She thinks I'm the stressed-out groom. She thinks I'm the one struggling to keep it all together while she plays the hero. She'd never question me. It's not in her nature." I stayed frozen between my coats. The scent of cedar and old wool was suffocating. Have you ever realized that the person you were prepared to spend your life with was actually just a stranger wearing a mask you helped them design? And the apartment? Sarah asked, her voice humming with a terrifying kind of ambition. I'll move in officially after the honeymoon, Daniel replied. Once the final paperwork is signed and the assets are fully integrated, it's practically ours. She was so easy to convince. Streamlining assets, I called it. She actually thanked me for being so proactive about our future. Ours. The word was a poison. I mentally scanned every document I'd signed over the last 8 weeks. He'd pushed for joint accounts, for a shared investment fund he managed, for security. I'd hesitated. My professional brain warned me, but he'd turned it into a test of love. He'd made me feel cold and calculating for wanting to keep my own money. He'd used my own profession against me, making me feel like I was overanalyzing our intimacy. She has no idea what she actually signed, Daniel continued, the clink of glass against glass sounding like a death knell. By the time she realizes the investment didn't exist, the money will have already shifted. It'll be offshore, tangled in so many shells she'll never see a dime. I'm not just taking her money, Sarah. I'm taking her safety. The woman laughed softly, leaning into him. You're ruthless. No, he corrected, his voice dropping into that chillingly efficient tone he used for business. I'm just maximizing the returns. She was a good asset for a while, but the market has changed. My hands were trembling so violently I had to grip the hem of a coat to stay silent. But as the shock began to recede, something else took its place. A cold, crystalline clarity. I wasn't just a victim in a closet. I was a witness. Then Daniel said the words that turned my blood into liquid nitrogen. After tomorrow, she won't be a problem anymore anyway. The room went silent. Even Sarah seemed to hold her breath. You're sure about the timing? She'll be on the 6:40 again tomorrow, Daniel said, his voice flat, logistical. I told her to take it tonight and tomorrow because of the bridge construction. The delays are expected. The signaling systems on that line are a disaster. It's a tragedy waiting to happen. If there's a malfunction at the bridge crossing, well, accidents happen in this city every day. A grieving fiancé, a tragic loss, and a very substantial life insurance policy I had her update last month just in case. The air left my lungs. He wasn't just stealing my life savings. He was positioning me for a casket. He had groomed me for my own end, using the 6:40 train as a weapon of convenience. I remembered him handing me that insurance form, his hand on my shoulder, whispering about being responsible before we started a family. I had felt loved. In reality, I was being appraised. I stood there in the dark, surrounded by the ghosts of my wardrobe, and I realized that the old woman at the station hadn't just given me a warning. She had given me a weapon. I didn't burst out. I didn't scream or throw the wine in his face. That's what a predictable person would do. That's what a warm person would do. But Daniel had spent months telling me I was cold and analytical. It was time to show him exactly how cold I could be. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. My hands were steady now. I opened the voice recorder. I held it near the crack in the door, capturing every word, every laugh, every detail of their new beginning. Then, I carefully switched to video. I caught a clear shot of them on my sofa, the wine, the intimacy, the casual discussion of my death. I felt a strange, detached power. Loneliness makes dangerous choices feel reasonable, but betrayal makes them necessary. I sent the files immediately to a private cloud folder, the one Daniel used to mock me for. You and your backups, he'd say with a smirk. He didn't realize that in my world, a backup is the difference between a total loss and a recovery. When I heard them move toward the bedroom, my bedroom, I felt a surge of revulsion, but I didn't move. I waited for the sound of the shower. The moment the water started running, I slipped out of the closet. I was barefoot, moving like a shadow across the floor I'd paid for. I grabbed my laptop, my external hard drive, my passport, and the physical folder of joint documents from my desk. I didn't take clothes, I didn't take jewelry, I took the things that could burn his world to the ground. By the time the shower stopped, I was already out the door. I didn't go to a hotel. I didn't go to a friend's. I drove 2 blocks away, parked in the shadow of an industrial building, and sat in my car. It was 2:17 a.m. The blue light of my laptop was the only thing illuminating the dark. I wasn't crying, I was working. First, I logged into our joint investment portal. Daniel thought he had the only keys, but he'd underestimated my ability to find backdoors in the very systems he'd helped me set up. I didn't just look at the accounts, I locked them. I initiated a compliance review flag. In the world of high finance, that's the equivalent of a nuclear strike. I used the keywords I knew would trigger an automatic, non-reversible audit: fraud, coercion, unauthorized beneficiary adjustments. I watched the screen as the access restricted icons appeared one by one. I could almost feel his heartbeat through the fiber optic cables. I was erasing his efficiency line by line. Next, I drafted an email to our wedding lawyer. No emotion. No, I can't believe he did this. Just the facts. Subject, urgent. Wedding postponed indefinitely. Evidence attached. I included the audio clips of him discussing the paperwork and the accident. By 4 a.m., I was exhausted, but the adrenaline kept the edges of my vision sharp. I felt like I was waking up from a long, drugged sleep. How had I missed the signs? How had I let a man make me feel like my intelligence was a flaw? At 6:35 a.m., as the sun began to bleed over the city skyline, I called the insurance provider's emergency fraud line. I requested an immediate freeze on all beneficiary changes. I gave them the timestamps of the recordings. I could hear the person on the other end of the line go quiet. They knew exactly what they were listening to. Then came the moment of truth. At 6:39 a.m., I sent Daniel a text. Trains delayed again. Thinking of coming home instead. Are you still there? I watched the 3 dots appear almost instantly. My heart hammered against my teeth. No, stay there. It's fine. I'm already at the office. Just wait for the next one. It's safer. Safer. The word was a punch to the gut. Panic hides poorly, even over a text message. He was desperate for me to be on that bridge. He was desperate for the accident to proceed as planned. At 7:05 a.m., I took the video I'd recorded, the one showing him with Sarah in my apartment, and I sent a private, encrypted link to his mother. She was a woman of high social standing who valued legacy above all else. I added a simple caption: ask your son why he was in my apartment with another woman while discussing my accident on the 6:40 train. Then I turned my phone off. I leaned my head back against the cold leather of the car seat and watched the city wake up. The world looked exactly the same, but for me, everything had shifted. I was no longer the fiancé. I was no longer the victim. I was the architect of the collapse. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. When I finally turned my phone back on at 9:12 a.m., it nearly vibrated out of my hand. 37 missed calls, 22 from Daniel, 5 from his mother, 3 from the lawyer, and 1 voicemail. I played it twice. Daniel's voice wasn't smooth anymore. It wasn't efficient. It was high, thready, and unraveling at the seams. Alina, what the hell is this? Why did my mother just call me screaming? Why is the bank freezing the investment accounts? What did you do? Answer me! I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I could see the activity logs on the accounts. He'd tried to log in 7 times in 40 minutes. He'd tried to move the money to the offshore account Sarah had mentioned, but the compliance flag had held firm. Desperation leaves fingerprints, and he was covered in them. By noon, the bank had formally suspended all his access privileges, pending a criminal investigation into financial elder abuse and coercion, a charge I knew would stick given his recent help with my savings. At 1:03 p.m., he showed up at my apartment. He didn't have his key anymore. I'd had a locksmith there by 8 a.m. He pounded on the door, his voice echoing in the hallway. Alina, open the door. We need to talk. You've got this all wrong. Need, the same word he used when he needed my signature. I opened the door slowly. I didn't hide. I didn't flinch. I stood in the threshold of my own life, looking at a man who looked like he'd aged 10 years in a single night. His suit was wrinkled. His hair was a mess. The smug tilt of his mouth was gone, replaced by a twitch of pure terror. You misunderstood, he started, his words tripping over each other. That conversation, it was a joke. Sarah and I, we were role-playing. You know how people talk when they're stressed. You're overreacting, Alina. You always do this. You twist things. I tilted my head, watching him like a specimen under a microscope. A joke about accidents at the bridge? A joke about my life insurance? His mouth opened, then snapped shut. For the first time in 3 years, I saw him truly afraid. Not because he felt guilty, but because he realized his prey was better at the game than he was. I didn't board the train, Daniel, I said softly. He stepped closer, his eyes darting around the hallway. You're ruining everything, my reputation, the accounts, the wedding. We can fix this. Just call the bank. Tell them it was a mistake. Your reputation? I asked. Not us? Not the love you pretended to have for me? Just damage control? I watched him carefully. I wanted to see the exact moment the mask fell off completely. Tell me something, I said, my voice steady. If I had boarded that train last night and something had happened, would you have even cried at my funeral? Or would you have been too busy calculating the payout? The silence that followed was my closure. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The truth sat between us, heavy and irreversible. His phone buzzed in his hand. He glanced down, and I saw the color drain from his face. The insurance provider had officially flagged the policy changes as coerced. The lawyer had withdrawn representation. And then he looked at me, not with anger, but with the hollow gaze of a man who had just realized he was a ghost in his own life. You sent it to my mother, he whispered. Yes, I said. She deserves to know who her son really is. She thinks you tried to... Well, she's seen the video, Daniel. She knows exactly what you are. He didn't slam the door when he left. He didn't make another threat. He just turned and walked away. His shoulders slumped, his efficiency finally defeated by the one thing he couldn't manipulate, the truth. 2 days later, I checked the news. The 6:40 train hadn't crashed, but it had been delayed for nearly 5 hours due to a massive signaling malfunction and a structural crack found near the bridge crossing. It was a tragedy that had been narrowly avoided by a literal hair's breadth. I don't know who that old woman at the station was. I never saw her again. I went back to the platform a week later looking for a flash of colorful scarves or those piercing, knowing eyes, but there was only the gray rush of the morning commute. Sometimes when I stand at that station, I wonder, was she a warning about the train? Or was she a warning about the man? Desire whispers louder than guilt, but survival speaks with a voice that cannot be ignored. I don't believe in omens, but I do believe in listening, and I'm finally done being predictable. I've since moved my accounts to a new firm. I've changed my locks, my number, and the way I look at the world. I still calculate risk, but now I count the things that can't be put into a spreadsheet. I count the weight of a breath, the value of a secret, and the cost of a narrow escape. Daniel is currently under investigation for financial fraud. Sarah disappeared the moment the accounts were frozen. And me? I'm still here. I'm still rational. But I'm no longer safe. I'm dangerous. Would you like me to help you draft a different ending for this story? Or perhaps explore the mystery of the woman at the station further? Like and subscribe for more stories of cold revenge and the secrets that hide in plain sight.